I'd like to start this video off by saying I do have a little bit of bias here. Of the three major manufacturers of guitars in America, Paul Reed Smith to me are at the top of that list. The quality control, the playability, the attention to detail, and quite frankly, some of the designs set them apart in my eyes from their competition. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about a line of Paul Reed Smith guitars some would consider to be the red-headed stepchild, the S2 line. We're going to be comparing them to some of the other lines that are available from the brand, as well as trying to answer the question of who are these guitars for and should you consider one. Now, in case you're not familiar with the brand, the S2 models are made in Stevensville, Maryland, same place where the Core models are made. The SEs are primarily made in Indonesia, save for the hollow body versions, which are made in China. The bolt-ons, including the John Mayer Silver Sky, the CE24, are also made in Stevensville, Maryland. When it comes to the S2s, though, they have a lot of things in common with the SEs as far as the building components that are chosen by Paul Reed Smith. When I was doing my research for this, I rewatched every single factory tour that Paul Reed Smith made available, and thankfully they are very transparent. You can't say that for every single brand here, showing us how each process is a little bit different from the line to line. The SEs have the same hardware, the same electronics as the majority of the S2s, but there are a few S2s that are available only from America that they don't have yet available in the SE line. I'm thinking of guitars like the Vela and also the McCarty 594. There on the other side of the token, you have the John Mayer Silver Sky SE, which is not available as an S2, but I digress. These commonalities and PRS's reputation of building really great playing guitars at any price point leads some people to the conclusion that why would I buy an S2 at all? If I'm getting the same exact electronics and hardware components on it, I'm really just paying for it to be made in America because the quality of the SEs are very good. But there are a few differences between the SEs and the S2s as far as the methods of construction and the pieces being used on them that I rarely see spoken about. On the S2, like this one, this is an S2 Custom 24, it's got really nice kind of flamey top on it. This is an actual maple cap, whereas on the SEs, you're getting a veneer. Is there anything wrong with the veneer? No. I actually don't think so. And as a big fan of Japanese guitars as well, I think of a lot of guitars from there in the early 90s that used a veneer that wasn't exactly the same quality of standard or even material. Orville, who was a company licensed by Gibson to build factories in Fujigen and Tarada, and then you had Fender Japan with some of their photo flame Telecasters and Stratocasters. It was not exactly a piece of wood, so it might peel off here and there, and some of them, if you search up reverb, not really aged all that well. What I do appreciate about the Paul Reed Smith SE versions of the veneers, it really is a genuine piece of wood, albeit extremely thin. However, that does allow them to paint the guitars or dye them, stain them in the way that is familiar with the brand. And one other thing about the S2s, the wood is actually cured and dried out in the same exact places that the Core line guitars are. The SEs, they're simply not. They're done in Indonesia. How that translates to the guitars actually sounding, responding, and the resonance of the instrument, I know that can be a little bit subjective to some people, but for me, I absolutely do notice that little bit extra when I pick up an S2 versus an SE. And when it comes to the Core guitars, which on average are at least double the price of a bolt-on or an S2 guitar, there's more to that cost difference than just the electronics and the pickups. One of the biggest reasons why that I've learned from the PRS videos aforementioned earlier in this video happens to do with the amount of time needed for each build. The necks on these take substantially less time to build because they scarf the headstock with the actual remaining part of the neck from one piece of wood very early on in the process, whereas the Core guitar uses a completely different kind of method. So to sum up this section of the video, the S2 line are American-made guitars with Asian electronics and Asian hardware built in the same factory that some of the greatest guitars, in my opinion, in the world are built, the Core Paul Reed Smith. So you know you're gonna get a very high quality instrument. So let's move on to who would buy one of these guitars and what models would it make sense to buy one of these guitars. And this is all my own complete subjective opinion here. If you're somebody who wants a McCarty 594 but you don't have the money for a Core, it's your only alternative because there is no SE McCarty 594 as of filming this video. I've done demos on both versions of the S2 and 594s, the single cut and the double cut. I'll leave links up here and throughout this video. I'm sure you've already seen a few here and there pop up on your screen. I love them. As far as the playability, absolutely lights out guitars. And part of the reason I started off with this one is because a used Core 594, they haven't been making them as long as they've been making some of the other models, like a Custom 24, a Custom 24, for example. So the prices are pretty high on the resale market. You can actually save a substantial amount of money buying an S2 even new versus a used Core. Now, the second guitar I'm going to mention here is not available as an SE or even as a Core standard production model, and that's the Vela. I've always wanted a Vela. PRS, if you're watching this, you can feel free to send me an email. Let's work something out. I would love to have one of those guitars. It's an offset design that has very unique to itself pickups in it and a cool Telecaster kind of inspired bridge, as well as the option between having it as a solid body or a semi-hollow construction. Very cool. If you want one of those, the S2 is the only place you're going to be able to get one. And no, I haven't forgotten about the CE24. I actually did a direct comparison of an S2 Custom 2408 with a CE24. That's another option for some people who are looking for a 24 fret model of a Paul Reed Smith instrument. That comes with the 8515s, American-made pickups in them, and to me, they're substantially better than the Korean-made ones by, I think it's G&B. While to my ears, the CE24 sounded substantially better than the 2408 S2, in my hands, the S2 felt a lot nicer to play. It's something about it, man. I just really connected with it personally. So it's one of those things where it's hard to say in a YouTube video, you know, this is definitively better than this, because we're all different. Our tastes are all different. But maybe it's the fact that maple neck, different kind of neck shape to it, and a bolt-on versus a glued-in neck. But all of the CE24s that I've played and all of the Custom 24s up to the 10 top that I used to have to these S2 versions, they feel, you know, just a little bit different. So best advice is always try as many as you can before you buy, regardless of what you're looking at. But before I get into the Custom 24 and some Core comparisons as far as the used market goes, I'm going to just come out and say my biggest kind of complaint, if you want to call it that, with the entirety of the S2 line, save for the Vela. And the reason I say that is because those pickups are unique to it. The fact that this guitar is $1,000 more than an SE Custom 24, or if you're buying a different model that's available also as an SE, it's going to be a similar price difference here. Comes with the same exact electronics. I don't love that. When I had both of those McCarty 594s from the S2 line, I felt the same way. And you can see with my wallet I spoke. I disliked them enough to replace them on both guitars. In the double cut, I put in a set of PRS 5708s, and in the single cut, I put in a set of Lindy Fralin pure PAFs. Once that was done, I had no complaints with either of those guitars because everything else really was up to standard, and that includes the hardware itself. I really wish, if anyone from Paul Reed Smith does watch this, that you would offer something that's at least different than exactly the same things that you're getting in the SEs, because Quite frankly, it's the number one kind of argument against getting S2 that I see from a lot of people. Why would I buy that when I could just have the SE version? I know the quality control is going to be great. I know the guitar is going to play really well, save a boatload of money, and what am I really getting extra with the S2? And to some extent, I think it's a fair kind of question to ask. And this leads me to the conundrum of the Custom 24 and the main argument I see against the S2 line in general. The Custom 24, you could buy one of the SEs that we mentioned that has the same exact pickups and hardware in it for half the price, brand new. Or you could buy a used Core model Custom 24 or Standard 24 for the same, if not even less, on the used market. It's a tough sell at that point for me because you don't have that kind of novelty that some of the other models do have, whereas the McCarty 594s, the SE, not an option. The Vela, there are no other options. A model like this, if this is what you really want, you're kind of in between a rock and a hard place with your decision. It can be confusing to some people. However, I'm going to tell you what I did. Obviously, I'm holding an S2 Custom 24 in my hands. This guitar already had a set of Seymour Duncans, 59 in the neck and a JB in the bridge, mint condition. Other than that, it was less than a new SE. And this is where the S2 value really skyrockets, in my opinion. These are very easy guitars to find for less than $1,000 US. And sometimes, like in the case of this one, with pickups already swapped into it, which would be the only real thing that I would want to replace. And at that point, I don't think you're getting much that's beating one of these guitars, period. That's going to be where we're going to end this today. I know, we were kind of all over the place. I didn't know what direction I wanted to take this in, and I'm not even sure if I answered the original question. But amazing guitars, maybe some of the compromises in the future going forward, looking at some constructive criticism for Paul Reed Smith, even if you don't do the 5708s or the 5909s, make something proprietary for this guitar to make it more unique to the SEs, or differentiate it a little bit more so from the SE versions. However, that's all I have for you guys today. If you found any of this scatterbrained kind of rambling useful, it'll be out a lot if you hit the like button. Comment, let me know what you think about the S2 guitars. Do you have an S2 guitar? Which one is it? What do you think about it? Or if you've moved on from one, let me know that as well. And as always, thank you all for the continued support, and I will see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody.